What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for December 6, 2024. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. I thought Monday's Raw was great. SmackDown really just in general. For the last little while, I would go back to like October, late October, early November, whatever, has been a very strong show, pretty consistently. And I was looking forward to seeing what the fallout would be on the Blue brand from Survivor Series last Saturday, especially coming off that great episode of Raw on Monday that I just mentioned. And I thought they lived up to the hype. This was a very, very good show. And not only progressed the Women's United States Championship Tournament, we got additional hype for Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens next Saturday, a week from today, on Saturday night's main event for the WWE Championship. We also got a surprise appearance from a couple of Raw superstars, the announcement of a trade window opening, which is news to most people. I mean, it was kind of rumored there for a little while, about a month or two ago, which I'll get into momentarily as far as my thoughts on the trade window and whatever. But it wasn't officially announced until this episode. We had some progression in the mid-card, the United States Championship picture, kind of, not really. We'll go into where that's going. A championship changing hands with DIY, as you can tell from the thumbnail. No need to hold off on the spoiler till later. DIY are the all-new WWE Tag Team Champions. And not only are they the new WWE Tag Team Champions, they are the heel WWE Tag Team Champions. So there was a lot going on this show. We had a great match between Bianca Belair and Piper Niven that kind of came out of nowhere. Wasn't announced until the episode itself, until earlier on in the evening. And I thought they went out there and had a much better than expected match. A Cody Rhodes, Chad Gable main event. Those were the Raw superstars popping up. In addition to Gunther backstage, Dominic Mysterio. I think there was someone else that Nick Aldis was shown conversing with backstage. All teasing potential moves to SmackDown as part of this trade window. So a lot going on this show. I thought it was a really, really good show. I will say this off the bat before I kind of get into the meat of the show itself, before I forget. They announced earlier in the day, WWE did. It was actually officially revealed on the Bill Simmons podcast, but WWE officially announced it themselves on social media soon after. And I mentioned this here because he was in the front row for this show in Minnesota. Jesse the Body Ventura returning to commentary in WWE for the first time in over 15 years. And even then, I mean, that was just a one-off on that Thanksgiving Raw back in 2009. And that was kind of a blast from the past in and of itself, which I didn't really appreciate completely at the time. And that was probably my first real introduction to Jesse, just because I hadn't seen Predator yet. I really wasn't brushed up on my WWE history. I was merely a year into my wrestling fandom. Year and a half in my wrestling fandom by late 2009. He had called one match on that Thanksgiving Raw. He served as the guest host that night when they were still doing the guest host Celebrity Raw bullshit. He was promoting his conspiracy theory show at the time. But he did call one match on that show alongside Vince McMahon, his old commentary buddy, I guess you could say, from back in the day. But he really hasn't done full-time commentary for WWE in decades. I mean, I think he may have been on, no, that was Bobby the Brain Heenan, right? That did the gimmick battle royal at WrestleMania 17. So honestly, I know he went into the WWE Hall of Fame in the mid-2000s. He really hasn't been on the best of terms with WWE in a very long time. But it was revealed recently that he was under a Legends contract with the company. And not only is he under a Legends contract, he's going to be calling Saturday night's main event. I don't know if it's one match or the entire show. I would imagine it's the entire show. Now, Jesse is a lot older now. I doubt he has any product knowledge whatsoever. But for the flashback nostalgia alone, for a lot of people, it's going to be really cool. Now, I'm actually hoping to be at the show itself next Saturday. So a quick programming note. Since I will likely be hoping to be at the show next Saturday in Long Island, in addition to SmackDown here in Hartford, I'm not from Hartford, but I am from Connecticut. Here in Connecticut next week, it's going to be a very quick turnaround for the shows. I'm going to be hoping to be at SmackDown that Friday, which is also shaping up to be a pretty fun show next week, especially coming off this show on Friday night from this week. I'm hoping to be at SmackDown on Friday, and then Saturday night's main event the next day. And getting there takes a little while, so I'm going to have to come back on Friday night, stay up late, get up early, a lot later and a lot earlier than I usually try to get some sleep. I'm gonna be running on fumes by Saturday morning, Sunday morning, to hope to do a SmackDown live review, or a SmackDown recap rather, that we do here on the channel, breaking down the Blue brand from my on-site report from Friday night, and then putting that out and hoping to do SmackDown Lowdown as well before I head on out for Saturday night's main event. So I am still hoping to do one of these reviews for the show next week in addition to being there. since I do have to go right back out and go to the Saturday night's main event show later on that day. So I may not even be at either. I'm hoping to be at both. It's not confirmed yet. I'm not sure. But that's the initial plan as of right now. But anyway, I mentioned all that to say that Jesse Ventura will be on commentary for that show. I will not be able to hear the commentary being in the building, obviously, if I am there, which sucks. I can just go back and listen to it, obviously. But I'm looking forward to that show, and I think they set it up nicely on Raw this week, announcing Gunther and Finn Balor for the World Heavyweight Championship at that event, as well as Liv Morgan and Io Sky for the Women's World Championship. We're getting the finals of the Women's United States Championship Tournament, and we also are getting, obviously, Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens for the undisputed WWE Championship. So speaking of Cody Rhodes, he did kick off this show, kind of talking about the Kevin Owens match coming up next Saturday, and really nothing out of the ordinary before he was quickly interrupted by Chad Gable and the rest of American Made, who did not step in the ring. They were at ringside dressed in suits, looking great. Chad Gable, this was the most serious that we have seen him on a WWE microphone in many fucking months. When he first turned heel earlier this year, and he was kind of like abusing Otis and abusing Alpha Academy, he was getting great heat. And he was on a high. He was main eventing Raw some weeks for the Intercontinental Championship. He had that great feud with Sami Zayn over the championship. And they were doing some great stuff. Early on in that process, he was a serious heel. Didn't win a whole lot of important matches, but he was a serious heel. And then they moved on from that. As soon as that program ended, he feuded with the Wyatt Six. And again, he was serious, but he was doing more comedy stuff. And ever since that feud ended, and he lost that feud too, he's been mostly doing comedy shit. And he's great at the comedy shit. But we've seen so much comedy shit with him, from the Shorty G bullshit to Alpha Academy. It's time to move on and go back to being serious Chad Gable. I mean, he could do the comedy stuff if he's an established player on the show, but he's not. He's been at the same level now on and off for many, many years. So I thought this was a really good exchange between himself and Cody. Cody did bring up Shorty G. God fucking don't remind me. From 5 years ago, that atrocity of a gimmick that Vince McMahon bestowed upon him. Terrible. Just terrible. And I think that lasted about a year, but it was a year too long. Let's put it that way. It was a lot longer than it should have been. But anyway, so Cody also poked fun at himself. He would not have been a very, great babyface if he was just out there poking fun at Chad Gable's past gimmicks and not his own. He also acknowledged his past as Stardust, and the crowd got a, Stardust chant going for a little bit, saying, like, look at me now, and I also feel like, you could be in a similar spot. But what happens when you fall short again? And I thought that was an interesting question, because obviously they did go on to, they did go on to have a match in the main event of this show that Chad Gable obviously fucking lost. And Chad Gable brought up, like, oh, you're not a great friend, Cody. I could see why Owens turned on you, blah, 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 all this other sort of shit. You turned on him first. But all of that doesn't really matter if it doesn't amount to anything for Chad Gable. For him to go out there and talk a big game and act all serious, which was great, and I thought this was a really good opening segment, doesn't matter if he can't fucking win. And I'm not saying he doesn't win ever. Like, there are the occasional matches, tag team matches, the occasional singles matches that he will win. We still have yet to get him and Rey Mysterio. If American Made end up on SmackDown as part of this trade window, which I'll get to in a little bit, probably right after the segment, which is why Chad Gable was on this show, because he mentioned it in his promo. I would love to see American Made on SmackDown. I feel like that's the perfect fit. But he can't move to the blue brand without first facing Rey Mysterio, at least one-on-one. They've had tag team matches. He's interfered in Rey's matches. Rey's interfered in his matches. We have yet to get Chad versus Rey one-on-one, at least as part of this feud. Maybe they did it a few years ago, but we haven't seen it as part of this feud on Raw yet. So hopefully they do that and then move him to SmackDown. But, I would love to think that maybe this is, just a small preview of what to expect from Chad Gable if he were to go to SmackDown and be booked like a serious threat. That would be wonderful. I'm just not optimistic because we really haven't seen it yet. But I thought this opening segment was effective in setting up the main event match for later on in the night between Chad Gable and Cody Rhodes. Now, as far as this trade window is concerned, they're doing this to promote the Raw to Netflix move. I couldn't tell you how many fucking commercials or quick graphics they put up for Raw on Netflix in a couple of months or a couple of weeks. Coming up in a month from yesterday, actually, on January 6th. So they're really heavily pushing the move, as they should. To promote the move, they want to switch up the rosters. And honestly, listen, I'm a traditionalist. I like to see people move around once a year. And if you have to do trades throughout the year, on occasion, then do it. Like last year, we saw it with Jey Uso and Kevin Owens going to SmackDown, Jey Uso going to Raw. They really haven't done trades otherwise. They did recruit people from NXT for right after the Rumble. Andrade went to Raw, then went to SmackDown as part of the draft. But, SmackDown got Jade Cargill, they got Braun Breaker, Tiffany Stratton, all this other sort of shit. Naomi, there were a lot of influx of talent as part of that early first few months of 2024. Not as many, notable, memorable moves being made in the draft a couple of months later, but I think they can benefit from doing the occasional trade window or just trades in general, like we saw randomly about a year ago with Jey Uso and Sami Zayn, or rather Kevin Owens, if it makes storyline sense. And I mentioned earlier that it was rumored, I don't know if it came from like a WrestleVotes or like a Fightful, but maybe PW Insider, I think, was the one that had initially reported it not too long ago, that there were talks of doing like a draft before the Netflix move. And I thought that would have been fucking dumb. I don't think you do a full-blown draft, because especially the execution of said draft is not very well done. Now, does this give me Superstar Shakeup vibes? It does. And the Superstar Shakeup was the draft, but people would just randomly show up wherever they wanted. Now, that's what we're going to be seeing in the move to Netflix. But the other part of this that we should also be seeing is the GMs exchanging Nick Aldis, like we saw on this show. Nick Aldis talking to Gunther and Dominic and Carmelo Hayes and kind of figuring out, all right, we'll trade this person for that person, and NXT is also going to be involved in the process. Does anyone from the main roster move to NXT? No, I don't think so. I mean, I know they got fucking Ridge Holland this past year. I think he was already on NXT, actually, before the draft earlier this year. No one was actually drafted to NXT. And anyone that is drafted to NXT, quite honestly, it doesn't really bode well for them on the main roster. In the last couple of years, who has been moved from the main roster, as a quick aside here, I know before deadline tonight, has been moved from the main roster to NXT and has really rejuvenated their career. Apollo Crews, Baron Corbin, and Dijak, all of whom did some of their strongest WWE work in NXT in the past 2 years. 2 of those guys are now gone from the company. Corbin got fired about a month ago. Dijak's contract was not renewed earlier this year, and Crews is in the exact same fucking spot that he was 5 years ago. Not even like 2 or 3 years ago when he was Intercontinental Champion. He is barely on SmackDown, and when he is, he typically fucking loses, or like on this show on Friday night, gets his ass handed to him. So my point is, drafting people to NXT isn't really the answer. At one point, I would have loved to have seen Nakamura back in NXT, but he's the United States champion. His presentation's great. I still don't give a fuck about Nakamura as being the U.S. champion. I feel like the title should have gone to someone else, like a Chad Gable if he were to come over, or an Andrade, or a Carmelo, or whoever. So I don't think anyone's going to NXT, but I could see absolutely people from NXT, now post-deadline as well, going from there to the main roster. It's like essentially they're doing call-ups, because you got to remember as well, WWE hasn't come out and said this, but we're all under the belief here, and it's been reported in several different places, that both Raw and SmackDown will be moving for Raw back to 3 hours, SmackDown to 3 hours for the first time, starting in January or soon after. Now again, Raw has been 3 hours before. That wasn't really a shock when we heard that. SmackDown, though, I don't think a single episode in the past 25 years has been 3 hours long. I could be wrong on that. Like Raw, even when they were doing 2-hour shows, would sometimes have the occasional 3-hour shows on USA Network. I don't think SmackDown has ever had a 3-hour show. And that's for the better, by the way. Keep SmackDown 2 hours. That's not going to happen. Whatever. I do worry about the quality of these shows for how great as they are right now, decreasing when they go to 3 hours, especially Raw. Raw's been fucking great. SmackDown's been pretty consistently solid, and you don't always get a great 2-hour show, but it's a lot less likely you're going to get a great 3-hour show than you are a great 2-hour show. 3 hours is just so fucking long. But then you also have the argument, they have a lot of people now, not everyone getting television time. Okay, does this mean that we're getting Giovanni Vinci and Apollo Crews having more matches together on SmackDown? I mean, what the fuck does that even mean? If the TV time for these people doesn't matter if they're not being used effectively. That's the question. Will they make the most of these 3 hours for the people, the roster that they have? That is the real question. So I think the biggest thing as part of this trade window is not only to move people from Raw to SmackDown and vice versa. I think American Made would benefit from that. Chad has lost that Intercontinental Championship opportunity a million fucking times. You could say the same thing for Sheamus too. I would not move Sheamus from that belt. Keep him on the same show as the Intercontinental Championship until he retires in 5 to 10 fucking years. Even after he wins it. Just keep him on the same show as that belt. I feel like that'd be dumb to move him. Gunther switching the main championships, I could see it. I could see them maybe wanting Cody Rhodes back on Raw. Cody Rhodes has been great on SmackDown since he moved to SmackDown earlier this year. I would not do that personally. I think it would be nice if they did separate Rhodes from the Bloodline. I will say that. I mean, I don't need to see Cody Rhodes. Again, even if they do Rhodes and Rock, which they should at some point, we have no fucking clue when we're getting that match, if at all. But that doesn't really need, you don't need Rock on SmackDown for that. Like, Rock's not an active member of the roster, of any roster, so that doesn't really matter. I could also see the scenario where they move Cody to Raw, and then fucking Roman would get moved to Raw too. Like, no thanks. I mean, maybe they move Roman to Raw with Cody to get Roman away from the Bloodline. I could see that. That's possible. And listen, I'm not really tired of Roman with the Bloodline. I'm tired of Roman feuding with Solo. But if he feuded with Jacob Fatu, that's a money match. I want to see that match at some point. Maybe they could save that for down the road. They don't have to do that right now. I would like to see it at WrestleMania. But these are all things to consider. Drew McIntyre resurfaced on Raw this week. I would have just waited until this trade window opened to move him to SmackDown. I think Drew and Cody would make a whole lot of fucking sense, either as a Mania match or as a Road to WrestleMania match. Whatever. I think that'd be great because Drew was actually one of the last people to beat Cody earlier this year in a singles match. I think actually he may have been the last person to pin Cody in a singles match. On Raw in February, it was a shock win. It was a great match. Go back to that. I could see that. AJ's hurt right now. But even before he got hurt, he came back, got hurt. That whole thing sucked. But even before that whole thing happened, it kind of seemed like he had done all there was to do on SmackDown. As a babyface, as a heel, he feuded with everyone they had on that show at the time, which is now the same roster we have now. That was only 2 months ago. I would move him to Raw too. Him and Gunther, if they don't move Gunther. I don't think Cody for Gunther, I know they're both world champions. That's not a fair trade. Now, could it benefit Gunther to go to SmackDown and become the focal point of that show because he's clearly not the focal point of Raw right now? Maybe so. But if you do that, you move Rollins and Punk away from Gunther, and those are fresh matches that they could always go back to down the road, I guess. But I still think you do those matches, at least one of them on the road to WrestleMania. We still don't know who Gunther's facing at the Rumble. I don't really care to see Gunther, Balor, and Priest in a triple threat. Fucking end that shit. I don't really care about that at this point. I feel like Gunther and Rollins or Gunther and Punk would make more sense. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see what this trade window brings. I don't have a lot of official picks beyond the people I just mentioned. But those are some scenarios. I would like to see some people from SmackDown move to Raw. I've said that before. I would like to see Naomi move to Raw, but like what happens with her and Jey Uso? They're a married couple. They won't be on separate shows, I wouldn't think. And then also, I'm hoping Naomi is behind the attack of Jade Cargill at this point. They kind of ruled out the Piper Niven thing I was worried about 2 weeks ago. I'll get to that in a little bit. But could Naomi move to Raw? Maybe, but I don't really want to see her move to Raw without first doing the thing with Bianca if she is the attacker. And I hope she is the attacker at this point. At this point, it makes the most sense. Unless Bianca hired someone, which would also be more convoluted than it needs to be, I think. And then you could do Bianca and Naomi on the road to WrestleMania, and maybe Jade and Naomi, and then hopefully Bianca and Jade at WrestleMania. Maybe a triple threat with the three women. Like, we could totally see that. I mean, we're all hoping for like the New Day triple threat at Mania. I think a triple threat with Jade, Bianca, and Naomi wouldn't be bad either. So, anyway, a lot of different moves they can make. We'll see what they do. It does make the shows more interesting to see who shows up where in the coming weeks. Like Carmelo Hayes when he complained to Nick Aldis backstage about like, oh, you're talking all these Raw guys and not to me. Maybe I'll move over to Monday nights and become Monday Night Mello. And he's like, listen, you want to become a headache for Adam Pearce, that's fine. An odd thing to say to one of your first-round draft picks, but, whatever. And he also kind of teased that he's going to be facing some competition, some new competition next week on SmackDown. Now, he didn't say next week, and he didn't say new, so I am kind of fucking putting words in Nick Aldis' mouth here. But, that being said, when they put up the clip on YouTube later on in the night on WWE's YouTube channel, it did say a new superstar. And you would think it would be next week, and I'm kind of hoping it's next week because I'm going to be there. And I think they're taping 2 SmackDowns. Wait, which would be weird. Are they taping 2 SmackDowns next week? I had heard that they were. But how would they do that? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Because if they are, Saturday Night's Main Event is being taped on Saturday. That's happening on Saturday. How the fuck do you tape a second SmackDown? And then, I guess, like, you're not going to have the new Women's U.S. Champion pop up on the show before it actually happens on Saturday. Maybe they'll do an entire SmackDown not revolving around that. I'm not really sure. I don't really know what they're going to do. But anyway, that's the dilemma that they deal with. We'll figure that out next week, I guess. If they do tape 2 SmackDowns next week when I'm there, I will not discuss the second SmackDown. Maybe I would, but I could put up a spoiler tag. I don't know. I would probably keep it separate. But anyway, though, so that's the dilemma that they deal with, I guess, as far as that is concerned. I don't even know what the fuck I was talking about, but like the trade window stuff, it's interesting. Like I said, you could see people pop up in the next couple of weeks. We'll see what happens. I already talked to the opening segment. The first official match on this show, it was a quarterfinal match in the Women's United States Championship Tournament. Another triple threat, of course. Tiffany Stratton, the Minnesota home state favorite here, getting a massive babyface reaction from this crowd. So thankfully she did go over. That still surprised me, though. She pinned Elektra Lopez, who, never really fucking wrestles. She's just in there to take the pin. That's fine. Not a great match. It had some weird moments, but it was fine for what it was. Tiffany winning did surprise me just because I thought we might get Bayley versus Naomi in the finals, and that might be where Naomi goes heel, and she revealed that she had tagged Jade, blah, blah, blah. She lost. She did not take the pin, but she did lose. So that makes me even more optimistic or, hopeful that she is the one that attacked Jade, because otherwise she's not doing a whole lot of winning right now. She did win at War Games. She doesn't lose all the time, but, being bumped from the first round when Tiffany already has the Miss Money in the Bank briefcase, she didn't need to win here. So I would hope that it's part of a storyline thing. The match was fine. We'll get Tiffany and Bayley next week in the quarterfinal match. And no, I'm sorry, I think it's Bayley and Chelsea Green. I'm thinking far ahead of Saturday and its main event. I'm thinking that's the match on that show. Honestly, I think Chelsea Green versus Michin would be better because it could go either way. But if they want the bigger match with the 2 bigger stars, I think it might be Bayley and Tiffany on Saturday, next Saturday. So it's going to be Michin and who did I say? Bayley versus fucking Chelsea Green is next week. Tiffany Stratton versus Michin is next week as well. So we have those 2 matches to look forward to. Speaking of the Bianca stuff with Jade Cargill, I mentioned, Bianca kind of blamed Piper, thinking, Piper's, or rather, Jade's attack allowed Chelsea to win that match last week or 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, because Jade got attacked, Bianca was distracted, and Chelsea won that triple threat. So, of course, Bianca blamed them for that, and Chelsea was in the ring, so it couldn't have been her unless, like, people saying the thing with Bianca, which is true. Yeah, she could have, she didn't literally do it. Bianca didn't do it in that moment. She was in the fucking ring, all right? And then I'll talk about that on SmackDown Lowdown. They made a stupid comment on that show about, maybe it was Chelsea. Chelsea was in the fucking ring. So if it wasn't Piper Niven, why the fuck would Chelsea have hired someone else to do it? That's just stupid. It was not Chelsea. It was not Piper. We know now. I said a couple weeks ago I could see it being them because not only did Chelsea advance in that triple threat, she also went on to, they could also have gone on to win the WWE Women's Tag Team titles. We still have no update on that, by the way. Bianca's still one half of the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, but if Jade's gone for a month or 2, then what the fuck happens to those titles? I would toss them in the trash, but they're going to probably want to keep them around. Chelsea and Piper would want them back. I could see that totally happening, but we didn't get that. The match we did get here between Bianca and Piper, I thought was great. Like, this had no business being as good as it was, because it's not like these 2 women aren't good. They've had very good matches before. They had a mini feud on Raw several years ago, back in 2021, I want to say. And they've had other matches since then as well, I believe, that were really good. But Piper Niven isn't really treated like any real threat on the show. And she went in there and had a great showing. Bianca looked great. The fucking KOD on top of Chelsea was really well executed. This whole match was a lot of fun, and the crowd was even chanting, "This is awesome." This was the type of throwaway match that people typically would not give a shit about because it didn't really mean much. But they went in there, killed it, and the crowd got behind it. Love to see it. I thought that was really well done. We had Shinsuke Nakamura out in the ring, coming off his United States Championship win at Survivor Series. Before he could even speak, though, he was interrupted by LA Knight and Andrade. Well, separately, of course. And Knight just saying, "I got my blockers on, my mist blockers on." He put on his fucking glasses so he couldn't be misted this time. Andrade said he also had a bone to pick with Nakamura after Nakamura cheated to beat him last week on SmackDown. So they both had unresolved issues with Nakamura. Before they could do anything, the Bloodline came out actually and attacked Knight and Andrade. And when I say the Bloodline, I'm talking about Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, and Jacob Fatu. No Tonga Loa, no Bronson Reed. And Bronson Reed wasn't like a full-time member of the Bloodline anyway, as far as I know. Bronson Reed got hurt. I think he hurt both of his ankles, if not one, maybe both. I forgot what they said here on the show, but he's going to be out for a while, I think, which is awful. Tonga Loa also got hurt. He tore his bicep, so I think he's gone for a while. He's also going to be gone for a number of months, which, I say it sucks. Tonga Loa is easily the most replaceable of all the Bloodline guys, but they are down a member, which sucks, so, it is what it is. but he got hurt, we found out on the show, as well as Jimmy Uso. He broke a toe, I think just one toe, so I think he'll be fine. He'll be back. They said out indefinitely. I think Jimmy Uso will easily be back before any of the other guys, but forgot to mention that earlier as well. So yeah, the Bloodline, the remaining members of the Bloodline anyway, did attack Knight and Andrade. They attempted to go after Nakamura. He got out of it. They didn't go after him. It kind of looked like they would. Then they didn't. So Nakamura escaped unscathed. Then Solo got in the mic and said, "Oh, I want to be taken seriously, blah, blah, blah." And the crowd booed, and he got good heat. This was designed to put more heat on the Bloodline after their loss in War Games. We got to move on, though. I'm not saying move on from the Bloodline. I like this version of the Bloodline. I said on Twitter a couple days ago, I think they've really found their footing with this group. Tama Tonga's fucking funny. Jacob Fatu, the whole I Love You Solo thing is great. Solo is also showing more personality, I feel like. He kind of said here, people don't look as a threat, because you're not a fucking threat. They never really win when it matters most. They won at Crown Jewel, but, they've lost almost every other big match they've had in the last 6 months. They won a Money in the Bank in a 6-man tag team match, and they won in another 6-man tag team match at Crown Jewel. They really haven't done a whole lot else otherwise. Solo Sikoa lost. There was 2 WWE title matches with Cody. They lost to Bad Blood in that tag team match against Roman and Cody. They lost in War Games. They don't really win a whole lot of fucking matches. This is coming from the exact same guy, Solo Sikoa, who literally said back in April that losing has consequences. Apparently not for him. He hasn't won a whole lot of fucking matches recently, so where are the consequences for Solo Sikoa? You know what I mean? So I guess this kind of just felt like a placeholder promo, and I really don't know where we go with Roman and Solo from here. We got no answers on that front this week, which was fine because the rest of the show delivered. But I don't think Roman's advertised, because I was looking at the listing for the show, I don't think Roman's advertised for any SmackDowns in the coming weeks. I don't think he's going to be on any of their house shows at MSG and shit. He might be. I don't think so, though. So are they just going to put the Bloodline stuff on ice again until Roman's ready to come back, or they put him back on TV? I'd rather see them get this shit over with in the next couple weeks. As far as Roman and Solo are concerned, Solo got pinned at War Games by Roman. He also got pinned by Roman, I think, at Bad Blood as well. But he's still out there with the fucking Ula Fala. But he's not the tribal chief. He says that he is and whatever. They got to fight for that tribal chief spot. They said that before Crown Jewel. It didn't happen. Or after Crown Jewel, it didn't happen. They got to do that soon. I would do that on the first SmackDown of the year, if not... The Rumble feels even too far away. Even that's 2 months away. I would not do it there. Saturday Night's Main Event is coming up next Saturday. Roman wasn't even on the show. I don't think he's on SmackDown next week. So I don't think that's happening. They probably want to keep it to 4 matches next Saturday, because it is a 2-hour special. They usually only do 5 matches on a fucking pay-per-view, so... and that's a 3-hour plus show. They might want to keep it to just 2 matches coming up in on 4 matches next week on Saturday Night's Main Event, rather. So we'll see. But I thought the segment was solid. Knight going back to feuding with the Bloodline, he's probably like, oh shit, man. I just can't fucking escape these guys. He's like in the Kevin Owens spot where he just cannot escape this fucking group. Andrade's never been an enemy of the Bloodline, but he is now. Knight's going to want revenge, and I could see us getting Knight and Andrade versus Tama Tonga and Jacob Fatu one of these days. Probably with the Bloodline going over. I am curious what they do with Knight, though, because, does he go back after the United States Championship? I don't know. I guess we'll find out in due time. Speaking of tag team matches, we had another WWE tag team match on the show for the WWE Tag Team titles. It was supposed to be, and I don't think they advertised this earlier in the day. I know it was reported by WrestleVotes, but they ended up switching course for storyline reasons, of course. They advertised at the beginning of the show that it would be the Motor City Machine Guns versus the Street Profits, because the Motor City Machine Guns even told the Profits, or told DIY a couple of weeks ago, if anyone's going to get the next shot, it should be the Profits, because they had a shot a couple of weeks ago, I think on the November 15th SmackDown, and it was interrupted by DIY. So why the fuck would DIY get another shot? Well, they did here, because the Profits got attacked backstage at one point in the show, and Nick Aldis didn't really have time to kind of register anything in his mind as far as what happens with the tag team title match. He just said the Profits couldn't compete. So then Johnny's like, well, we could take the shot instead. And Alex Shelley and Nick Aldis was like, well, I don't really know about that. And then Alex Shelley's like, well, yeah, why not? We're ready to fight. Let's give him the shot. Why not? So it all turned out to be a big ruse. Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa have been teasing tension for a while now. And Ciampa even told Gargano that they were done. But instead of going right, they went left. They swerved us. Johnny Gargano goes heel, hit the low blow on Chris Sabin. They attacked Alex Shelley, DIY double-teaming Sabin, pinning Sabin to win back the WWE Tag Team titles. I thought this was great. It was more of an angle than a match. The match was good. The angle was better. I thought this was much needed for everyone involved, honestly. I still think we got to get that Profits DIY Motor City Machine Guns triple threat tag team match. That sounds fucking awesome. So hopefully at some point we get it, whether it's next Saturday or soon after, maybe on the first SmackDown of the year. We got to get it at some point because that just sounds like it has a lot of potential to be a lot of fun. But I think this is really good. DIY are natural baby faces as a tag team. But a couple things here. One, they weren't really getting over in that role. Two, they were fucked out of the tag titles, and they weren't going to win them back as baby faces with the Machine Guns being the champions. Machine Guns came in, and DIY got jealous of that. The Profits got jealous of that. So, third thing here, for anyone complaining, oh, they were only champions for a month and a half, what was the point? Like, listen, I'm not a big Attitude Era guy, but for everyone clamoring for the Attitude Era back, they had fucking month-long title runs every fucking month with almost every single championship. There was not a single person, for the most part, during that time in the Attitude Era was a champion for more than 3 to 4, 5, 6 months. We get that all the time in WWE. Not every fucking team has to hold the belt for a month or for 6 months or for 3 to 4 months. That is an average reign, but you can have effective runs that are 5 to 6 weeks that serve a storyline purpose. Jey Uso being the Intercontinental Champion was a prime fucking example of that. If you have Nakamura win the US title and then lose it right back tonight in a week, that is stupid to me. That would just be a waste. But for like the Jey Uso thing, yeah, Braun Breaker won the belt back, but Jey Uso got a great moment out of it, one of the best moments on Raw all year. He was super over. He finally got his moment. He was fucked out of it by the Bloodline. So it just kind of made sense to do what they did. Here as well, DIY went heel because the Machine Guns came into SmackDown, immediately won the belts. They were jealous. They turned heel. They're fucking pissed off about it. And now we have another feud on our hands with DIY as the established bad guys in this situation. So I thought this whole thing was great. DIY, they get to do something different. They also never really had a run as a heel team in NXT. They did briefly. Johnny turned heel, I think in late 2018, him and Ciampa kind of reunited softly for a little bit, and then it was all like, I don't know if it was all a ruse, but Gargano did turn on Ciampa like a very shortly thereafter so he could feud with Ciampa for Mania weekend, for TakeOver New York, TakeOver Brooklyn 4 or 5, whatever the fuck it was. So they didn't really go on as a tag team for too long. They've had more babyface runs as a tag team than as a heel team. So it's something different. We've never seen it on the main roster. The Guns can chase now. The Profits are also involved. I think this is great. I was a real big fan of this. I don't really care that the Machine Guns were champions for a month and a half. They're not fucking buried. First of all, it's better than them not winning the belts at all. Second of all, in addition to everything else I already mentioned, they will be fine. If they can stay the course here, remain in the picture, maybe get the belts back at some point down the road, again, chase, whatever, they will be fine, trust me. Main event on the show, Cody Rhodes versus Gable. The outcome was never really in doubt, but they went out there and had a great match. I thought this was really fun. They had a Raw match about a year and a half ago. I think it was on Cody Rhodes' road to WrestleMania in 2023 that I remember being really good. This was also really good. It was nice to see Gable back in the main event for a change, treated like an actual... I mean, he was in the main event of Raw during the Uncle Howdy feud. I was at that fucking Raw because that's why I remember. He lost. He lost here too. But it was nice to see him back in the main event for a change and not do any of the comedy shit. The interference was kept to a minimum from American Made on the outside. Cody Rhodes won anyway. Chad focusing on the ankle. This was just really good. Just a great wrestling match, and Cody looked great. What I forgot to mention earlier was that Kevin Owens was supposed to do an interview backstage on this show. And he said, I've been in the arena on SmackDown enough times. I'm not fucking going into work. It's stupid. I am here, so I'm going to stay in my car. So if they want Michael Cole to interview me, he can come out to my car and talk to me. Michael Cole was acting all annoyed, as anyone would, because it was like fucking 20 degrees, if not less, in Minnesota that night, on Friday night. So he was probably freezing his ass off, as you could clearly see him shivering when he walked outside of the arena to KO's car. And they were going to do the interview with Michael Cole staying outside the car, and KO said, no, come in my car. It's a toasty 68 degrees. It was more comedic than it probably needed to be, considering this is a serious feud between Owens and Rhodes. But the logic he provided for why he hated Cody and what Michael Cole said in response was great. It was a different setting than what we would have gotten in a normal sit-down interview backstage. It was the same material, but a different setting. And I thought that was refreshing. I thought that was really cool. So then when Michael Cole called Kevin Owens petty and he got pissed, he kicked Michael Cole out of the car. And that whole thing where he's like, hey, Michael Cole, come back. And then he rolled out the window was really fucking funny. Kevin Owens then leaves the arena, which made it then more surprising when he resurfaced at the end to go after Cody. Cody was still recovering from the match with Chad Gable. He was sitting on the mat when Kevin Owens just was showing standing over him, which was a great shot, great camera shot there, I thought. And then they brawled, and I thought Owens might lay him out to close out the show, but instead they just brawled, and it was a hot brawl, and it was a great way to go off the show. They left me looking forward to that match next Saturday, which was the point. I'm really looking forward to that match. I would love to see, like you talk about short title runs, KO getting a short run as WWE champion, because I doubt he fucking walks into WrestleMania as champion, all right? And him just getting the belt for like a couple of weeks, if not a month and a half, 2 months, I feel like would be great. It would keep the Cody feud going for a little bit longer. Cody's back in chase mode. KO gets a world title reign. I'm not convinced that it's going to happen. I think Cody Rhodes will win. They're probably going to want to keep the belt on Cody until Mania or until the Rock feud or both. I don't think it's going to happen. I'll talk more about my predictions for the event either next week here on the SmackDown review or on Wrestle Rant Radio next Thursday or whatever. But I thought what they did here was really, really well done. It is also worth noting that in that sit-down car interview, and KO's rental car to be specific, that happened here on the show between Cole and KO, KO did bring up, because Michael Cole said, what about the Usos and Sami Zayn? They joined Roman too. They wanted to help Roman a lot like Cody did. And KO was like, I'm not surprised by the Usos, they're fucking family. Sami Zayn, I will deal with that another time. So there you go. For anyone complaining, they haven't acknowledged Sami Zayn, well, because it didn't make sense to yet. Because they're going to go to that at some point. They're not going to completely fucking forget about it. They're not currently on the same show. KO, they appear on the same shows because of all the brand, switching up and all the fucking swapping and the appearing on other shows anyway, on the road to Survivor Series and whatnot. They don't give a fuck about that stuff at this point. But, as part of this trade window, KO could end up back on Raw or Sami could end up back up on SmackDown. That it would not be out of the realm of possibility. I could totally see Sami Zayn going back to SmackDown and him and KO having another Mania match. I say another one because they've already had a few. They've teamed at Mania. They had a singles match in Mania. But guess what? This would mean way more than their Mania match in 2021 because it would have an actual story. KO would be the heel this time. And I think it'd just be perfect. I think it'd be great for both guys. I think it'd be really, really great for both guys. So anyway, I thought this was a really, really good show. I know this is a lengthy review, a lot to break down, but I like weeks where there's a lot to talk about here on SmackDown, a lot to get excited about. And like I said earlier, I'm really looking forward to being not only hopefully at Saturday Night's Main Event on Saturday, but SmackDown itself next Friday, which will feature the semifinals in the Women's United States Championship Tournament. Bayley taking on Chelsea Green and Michin taking on Tiffany Stratton. So 2 thumbs up for SmackDown and Raw this week. 1 for Raw, 1 for SmackDown, if not 2 individually, which means you get 4 thumbs up. You get my point. I'm hoping to do a SmackDown audio review here on the channel next Saturday morning before I have to take off for the show. If I go to the show, I have no fucking clue what's going on right now, but if I do go to the show, don't go to the show, I'm still hoping to do a SmackDown audio review, unless I have no choice but not to do one. I don't know. Stay tuned for that here on the channel next Saturday. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, full-ass podcasts, full-length podcasts, Q&A videos, other reviews, live reactions, and so much more. Classic content, interviews. Just had my interview go up with Raquel Rodriguez earlier in the week. Check that out if you haven't already seen it. But anyway, folks, have a great one. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Have a great holiday season, and I'll catch your ass down the road.